In this video, we are going to talk about section 6.7 about simple interest. Okay, so the simple interest formula looks like this. Capital I equals capital P times little r times little t. And that doesn't mean anything to you unless, of course, you know what those parts actually mean. So capital I is the amount of interest earned. Capital P is the principal amount invested, or some think of it as the original amount. R is your interest rate, and I have here written as a decimal. And T is your time, and it's important to know that that time is in years. So if you aren't given a time in years, you have to actually figure out how many years it is. Okay? So let's take a look at a couple problems. What is the simple interest earned on $3,400 invested at an interest rate of 5.5% for 1 year? Okay? So we're going to take our formula, I equals P times R times T, and we're going to plug in the pieces that we know. So our principal, or original amount that we invested, is $3,400, okay? And our interest rate is 5.5%, but we also, of course, know that 5.5% means times 0.01. Now, if you just know that 5.5% is 0.055, then I'm okay with that. I'm okay with you actually just entering that in. But otherwise, I need you to remember to put 5.5 times 0.01. Okay? And the time in this case is how long? Well, it's 1 year, so we need to go ahead and put that on the end. Okay? And this will all equal the amount of interest we are earning, because that is what it is asking. What is the simple interest? Okay, so interest equals, and we're just going to go ahead and multiply these out. So I take my 3,400 times my 5.5 times my 0.01 times 1, and I get I equals 187. So what does that actually mean? What are the units here? The interest earned is, and that's of course in dollars, so $187. So I'll write that here, $187, okay? All right, so let's look at this one. What is the simple interest earned on $2,850 invested at an interest rate of 8% for 3 months? Here's where I said you got to be careful, because this is not actually in years, this is in months. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and fill in what we know. So our original amount is $2,850. Our rate is 8%, so that's 8% times 0.01, or the answer ends up being 0.08. And then times our time in years, but 3 months. How much of a year is that? Well, if you're unsure, you could list it as a fraction, 3 out of 12, because we know that 12 months is total. If it were a whole year, or 12 months, 12 out of 12 would equal 1. But in this case, we're only doing part of a year, 3 months, 3 out of 12. Okay, so then we go ahead and we multiply it all out. I'll give you a second to do that. And what do we get? Okay, so the interest earned was $57. Okay? Similar one. Here we go. If Joey borrowed $1,500 at a rate of 7.75% interest for 75 days, how much interest will he have to pay on the amount he borrowed? And then it asks another question. If he pays off his debt at the end of 75 days, how much total did he pay back? There's 2 questions here. Okay, so we're going to fill in our formula. So he borrowed $1,500, and our interest rate is 7.75%. If you're not sure how to write that, go ahead and multiply 7.75 times 0.01, and it's 0.0775. Don't lose any of those decimals, they're really important. 75 days. How much of a year is that? Well, there are 365 days in a year, so it's 75 out of 365. All right, so we gotta actually multiply this all out. And what we get is, we get kind of a long decimal here. I get 23.8869863. That's as far as my calculator goes. So what is that exactly? Remember, we're dealing with money, so we have to round it to 2 decimal places. So I'm going to round this to 23.89. Why did I round up? Well, partly because there's a 6 here, and that's greater than 5, but also when it comes to money, especially when you owe people money, you're going to round up. All right, so interest paid was, that's a D, was $23.89. But then it asks, if he pays off his whole entire debt, how much will he pay? Well, this is what he's paying in the interest, but he actually has to pay back that original amount he borrowed as well. So his total debt was our $1,500 originally plus the $23.89, so $1,523.89. All right, so that's how we figure it out all together. All right, let's take a look at a couple more. How about this one? A newspaper advertisement offers a $5,000 used car for nothing down and 36 easy monthly payments of $175. What is the simple interest rate? So this one we're actually missing a different part of this problem, okay? So the initial amount here is $5,000, right? So that's, if we think about our interest equals our principal times our rate times our time, our original amount that we paid is $5,000 here. And then how much interest did we pay altogether? Well, I have to do something where I have to figure out how much did I pay altogether. So I have to take my $175 times my 36 payments, and we figure out that altogether we paid $6,300 for the car. Well, if the car costs $5,000 and we paid a total of $6,300, how much of it was interest? Well, that extra $1,300 was our interest. Okay? So we don't know the rate, that's what we're trying to figure out. And the time, how long did we pay this for? 36 easily monthly payments. How long is that in years? That's 3 years. Okay? So now we're going to simplify, and what we get is this equation. How do we solve for r? That's what we're trying to solve for. Well, we need to divide by our 15,000. And what we get is 0.086666 repeating equals r. Well, we want to know what this is as an interest rate, not as a decimal, so I need to move my decimal 2 places to the right, and I get 8.66% repeating, or 8 2/3% simple interest. So this one was a little bit tricky because we had to work backwards, but it's definitely doable for you, okay? Let's try one more that's similar to that. A newspaper advertisement offers a $7,500 used car for nothing down and 36 easy monthly payments of $255. What is the simple interest rate? Well, we're going to follow along with what we did in the previous problem. So our original amount, $7,500. And then I have to figure out, well, how much interest did we actually pay? So we're going to multiply our monthly payment times our total amount of payments, 36, and we see that we paid a total of $9,180. So if you subtract the initial amount that you bought the car for, the initial price of the $7,500, and you get how much of that is in interest. And it looks like $1,680. So that's times our rate and times our time, which we again is 36 payments, which is 3 years. Remember, time always needs to go in years. I suppose you could put it in months if you did 36 divided by 12, but it's easier to put it in 3 years. Okay, so I now have 1680 equals 22,500 times R. And to solve for R, we're going to divide. To solve for R, we're going to divide. And we get $0.07466 repeating equals our R. So we have 7.466 repeating percent simple interest. There we go. So this is how you work out some simple interest problems. I encourage you to find a way to commit this formula to memory because you will need to know it for sure on a test. Okay, keep up the good work and we will see you in the next video.